Texas versus Washington. This is the semifinal game that I am the most excited for because I honestly am torn between who I am picking to win this matchup. Because these teams are evenly matched, and to be honest with you, the winner of this game to me is going to decide who wins the national championship. Because there are both bad matchups for Alabama and Michigan. Alabama and Michigan are run-dominant teams. If they don't have success running the ball offensively, it's wraps. Regardless of how good their defenses are, Texas and Washington, they're more complete teams than what Michigan and Alabama are. At least to me, when you look at the stylistic standpoint of this. Texas, they got the talent advantage over Washington. All right, when you ask yourself who is just the best overall team, you got to give it to Texas. They're better up front. Defensive line is really stout against the run. They got stout linebackers. Their secondary is their weakness. All right. And Texas fans try to defend this and say, man, like, we just give up a lot of yards late in games. Like, Dylan Gabriel shredded that secondary. Will Howard for Kansas State before he entered the portal, he shredded that defense. And you see, Texas offensively, they got a fantastic offensive line. We know how good they are at wide receiver with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and Quinn Ewers at quarterback, and how great their run game is despite losing their starting running back. But the biggest mismatch in this game for Texas defensively is their secondary against Washington's wide receivers. Washington's offensive line is no pushover. All right, they may not have anybody from the South like what you do, those big boys from the South, but they got those big Polynesians, man. And those dudes, they're really good offensive linemen also. Those dudes on the West Coast, don't sleep on those dudes. Like, this is a really fantastic offensive line. They've only given up 10 sacks this year. In Washington, they don't need to have a great day on the ground to beat this Texas team. I've heard Longhorns fans DM me and say that, you know, Washington isn't going to win because they're not going to be able to run the ball on this defense. They don't need to. They've never been a team that has won games because they've had a lot of success on the ground outside of the way that they beat Oregon in the Pac-12 championship with how good they are at wide receiver. As long as this is one of those games where they can start out hot and Michael Penix is on, they can throw bombs and get big plays all day on that Texas secondary. And do we forget how that Alamo Bowl went between these two teams last year? Who won that game? Washington. Like, these football games aren't always about who's more talented. There's an old expression that goes, styles make fights. And stylistically, the biggest disadvantage that Texas defense has is their secondary. And you can say and make all the excuses all you want to, but these are 3 6-foot tall or bigger wide receivers that are 200 plus, that are really good at stretching the field, really good after the catch. You're not going to be able to slow these dudes down. You haven't seen an offense like this all season long. Now, Texas, offensively against Washington's defense, look, Washington's defense isn't as bad as what you may think. If you're somebody who just looks at the statistics, of course you're going to say, man, this defense sucks. But if you really pay attention to Washington, they've dealt with some injuries on that side of the football. There was one stretch of the year when they were playing with the flu. The second half of the season, this defense kind of carried this team to the finish line. They barely were able to beat Arizona State. They barely were able to beat Oregon State. Their offense scored 20-something in the first half, and they got shut out by the Ducks. And that Beavs offense, they got shut down by that Huskies defense in the end. And in the Pac-12 championship, their defense really won the game. Washington defensively, they're formidable. All right, they're not as big and deep as what Texas is up front, but they're going to be well coached. And they're going to have a way at being able to generate a couple of stops because Quinn Ewers, like Michael Penix, they're really streaky quarterbacks at times. Quinn Ewers has had games in the past when he's got out the slow starts and he's got a little bit rattled early. This is going to be a game that comes down to which offense can get going faster. If Michael Penix comes out of the gate looking like how he did against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, it's going to be tough sledding for Texas defensively. Same thing for Quinn Ewers and his Longhorns offense. And they're more balanced than Washington. Washington can run the football when they have to, but you do need to be a little bit balanced. But with how effective their passing attack is and with how good of a quarterback Michael Penix is, their offensive line can hold up and they can get a lot of shots downfield on Texas secondary. Washington, their defense isn't just going to get torn apart because Oregon is a really good team. All right, and if you would have played Oregon, they would have put points on your defense too. Let's not act like your defense has just had these masterclass performances against offenses all season long. When you've gone up against capable quarterbacks, you've gotten torn to shreds. Will Howard was snapping on your defense. Dylan Gabriel went off against your defense. So let's just cut this narrative that, your secondary is going to just all of a sudden have everybody out there looking like the Royal Reapers. You're not going to box this offense. All right. Kalen DeBoer and his offensive coordinator, I think that they're being really underestimated in this game. When it comes to the coaching advantage, Kalen DeBoer has that over Steve Sarkisian. Kalen DeBoer, this dude has been winning everywhere he's been. Even when he was coaching NIIA. And the dude that's who his offensive coordinator was on his staff those years as well. He hasn't lost the game since last year. And they beat you last time they faced off against each other. So Kalen DeBoer, this is a coach that always has his team ready for the big games and the bright lights. Texas, they're back. All right, we've been wondering when it was finally going to be true. But this is the year. And this is a game that can go either way. Because Texas offense, they're going to put up a lot of points on Washington's defense. Nobody's denying that. Washington's defense may get a couple of stops or two. Is Washington going to be able to take advantage of that? We'll see. But this is a game where both of these squads are going to put up at least 30 to 40 points. All right. I'm picking Washington with the upset. Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, Kalen DeBoer, I believe they're going to top the Longhorns 45 to 38. It's really hard to pick who's going to win this game because both of these teams, to me, stylistically, are really even. And I like Michael Penix more than Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers has played great, but I just trust Michael Penix because he's been more consistent than Quinn Ewers. And Quinn Ewers has had some games when he's looked a little off. Now, he has had injuries that he's had to battle through, but I just really like this Washington team. I really do. They've been underestimated all year long, but I've been rocking with them. I picked them to win the Pac-12 before the season started. People don't even realize that. I picked them to beat Oregon twice. And the reason why I say this team is underestimated is because people thought they were going to lose to Oregon State. Nobody thought that they were going to beat Oregon again. Everybody was saying how Oregon possibly was the second best team and Washington was just being overlooked. They were shocked. A lot of people were shocked when Washington got into the playoffs. This was my playoff pick before the season started. You can go look on my Twitter, JT Sports __ and type in Washington, and you're going to see my playoff predictions. I had them in along with FSU. We know FSU got screwed, but, this Washington team, man, people didn't expect them to remain unbeaten after they beat Oregon the first time. And then when they beat Oregon again, everybody's like, oh, shit. Everybody's trying to figure out just how good is this Washington team. And Texas, if they were so much better than Washington and Washington's offensive line wasn't going to be able to hold up and it was going to be a mismatch in the trenches, Vegas wouldn't have them favored by 4 points. Vegas, I think, kind of leans Texas a little bit too soft. Like, if they really believed that Texas was going to win this game convincingly, they would make them a touchdown favorite. Washington, with how good this coaching staff is and the talent that they got at receiver and how effective their passing attack is going to be, they're going to be able to put up a lot of points on Texas defense. Texas offensively is going to be able to do the same, but I trust Washington's defense more in critical situations. They were able to slow down Oregon's offense. Oregon has one of the most efficient offenses in college football over the past 2 years, and that's with the new offensive coordinator. Like, Washington's defense, they're not great, but they show up in big moments.